Introduction. Good evening. Tonight, we step back in time to an era when stone castles rose high above the landscape, their towering walls keeping out the cold winds and protecting their inhabitants from enemy forces. These great fortresses were symbols of power and grandeur, but as we journey through their winding halls, hidden staircases, and dimly lit chambers, we'll discover that life inside them was not as romantic as the stories often tell. As we move through the castle's heavy wooden doors, let the sounds of history, quiet yet immense, surround you. The faint echoes of distant conversations, the rustle of tapestries brushing against the stone, the flicker of torchlight as it casts shadows across cold, unforgiving walls. These are the silent witnesses to centuries of struggles, triumphs, and daily routines, many of which have been long forgotten. This journey will unfold slowly, quietly. We'll start with the often overlooked lives of those who served the castle's elite move to the life of a legendary king, uncover the secrets of castle construction and hidden rooms, and finally compare the luxuries of noble life with the grueling existence of the common folk who worked the land. No need to rush, just let the story unfold at its own pace, gently guiding you through the past. Segment 1. Why it sucked to be a castle servant. Imagine yourself in the shadow of towering stone walls, cold to the touch, unyielding, like the castle itself. The air smells faintly of damp earth, mixed with the acrid scent of wood smoke. You live and work in a castle, but not as one of the noble lords or ladies who walk through the grand halls, draped in velvet and silk. No, you are a servant, one of the many unseen workers who keep this fortress running, often with little to no recognition for your labor. The life of a servant is a far cry from the luxurious existence the nobles lead. Your room is tiny, dark, and cold. It's built into the stone walls of the castle, away from the warmth of the hearth. There is little light and even less warmth. At night you lie in a straw-stuffed mattress, the dampness of the walls creeping into your bones. The air is thick with the scent of mildew, and the constant draft from the stone corridors means you never truly escape the chill. Each day is a long series of chores, all aimed at maintaining the grand castle and satisfying the needs of the nobles who live there. You rise early before dawn to tend the hearth. There are fires to light, floors to scrub, and rooms to clean, tasks that never seem to end. The work is physically exhausting, and there is little respite. Every corner of the castle requires attention, from the kitchens, where food is prepared for the lords, to the stables, where the horses are cared for. Every chore is demanding, and there is no room for error. If you fail, punishment is swift, though rarely severe. It's a life of constant motion, of serving those who rarely acknowledge your presence. The castle's layout is designed to keep the noble families separate from the common folk. The upper floors, where the nobility reside, are warm, brightly lit, and comfortable. But the lower floors where servants live are dark and cold. You may walk past your masters in the hallway, but you are invisible to them. Their lives are filled with feasts, music, and art. You only get glimpses of it. The sound of laughter echoing down the corridor, the distant clang of goblets filled with wine. But none of that is for you. The food you eat is basic, often bland. Stale bread, thin broth, perhaps a bit of cheese if you're lucky. You eat in the servants' quarters, a stone room dimly lit by a single candle, sharing your meals with others who are just as weary as you. The luxuries of fine meats, wine, and rich delicacies are reserved for the nobles. But you don't mind. After all, there is no other option. The castle demands your service, and you provide it day after day. Perhaps the hardest part is the feeling of being trapped. You can't leave without permission, and even then, it is rare for you to get time to yourself. When you do, the world outside feels as distant as a dream. The castle is a fortress in more ways than one. It keeps enemies out, but it also keeps you in. Despite it all, you endure. You find small comforts in the routine of work. There is satisfaction in knowing that the castle runs because of your labor, even if no one ever acknowledges it. You find camaraderie with other servants, the shared understanding of your position. You keep your head down, focus on the work, and hope for the day when you might earn a little more or find a way out. But for now, the castle is your world, and your life, while unnoticed by the nobility, is the heartbeat that keeps it all in motion. Segment 2, the life and death of King Richard the Lionheart. Now, we leave the cold stone walls and dim corridors of the castle servants' quarters behind. Imagine yourself walking, slowly, through the grand halls. The echoes of your footsteps on the polished stone floors fade as you turn a corner, and suddenly you are in the presence of something far greater, something far more powerful. You are now standing in the heart of the castle's upper chambers, the chambers of the king. But this is no ordinary king, no mere noble. This is Richard the Lionheart, a man whose name still resonates through the centuries as a symbol of bravery, ambition, and tragic destiny. Richard, or Richard the Fan of England, was born in 1157, the third son of King Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. His life, like the very stone of the castles he would one day rule, was solid, enduring, and full of untold weight. But unlike many kings before him, Richard's story is not one of peace or ease. His life was defined by war, by the endless pursuit of glory, and by the expectations that came with bearing the crown of England. As a young man, Richard's world was already shaped by conflict. His father, Henry II, was a ruler with an iron grip on his kingdom, but his kingdom was torn by internal strife. The dynasty was divided, with each of Henry's sons vying for more power. Richard, however, was not one to be content with the life of a quiet prince in the shadows. His heart was set on the Crusades, and from an early age, he demonstrated the fiery resolve that would come to define him. By 1187, the Crusades had become a rallying cry for Christian knights across Europe. The Holy Land, and particularly Jerusalem, had fallen to the Muslim forces of Saladin, a formidable leader and a man Richard respected. For Richard, this was more than a religious duty. It was an opportunity to cement his name in history, to create a legacy that would live on long after his death. In 1189, at the age of 32, Richard took the cross and set out to reclaim Jerusalem. He was joined by his fellow monarchs, including King Philip II of France and Emperor Frederick I of the Holy Roman Empire. Together, they would lead the Third Crusade, a campaign that would become one of the most celebrated and yet most tragic chapters of Richard's life. The journey was long, arduous, and filled with difficulties. The Crusaders battled hunger, disease, and the harsh conditions of the terrain. Yet Richard, known for his courage and indomitable will, led his forces with fierce determination. He captured the port city of Acre in 1191, and his triumphs against Saladin's forces were numerous. His reputation as a warrior, a lion-hearted leader, grew stronger by the day. But despite his successes, Richard was not the only player in the crusade. Political intrigue swirled between the Crusader kings. King Philip II, his French counterpart, withdrew from the campaign early, leaving Richard to carry the weight of the crusade alone. This marked the beginning of a more isolated phase of Richard's journey. He would go on to fight Saladin at the Battle of Arsuf, securing victory and advancing closer to Jerusalem. But the city would remain out of reach, and ultimately, Richard made the painful decision to negotiate a truce with Saladin in 1192. Jerusalem would remain under Muslim control. Richard's return to England was filled with political turmoil. His absence had caused strife back home. His brother John had plotted against him during his time abroad, and there were disputes over the throne that Richard had to address upon his return. The king's charisma and strength were enough to quell these challenges, but his time in England was brief. Soon, he found himself once again caught in the complex web of European politics. In 1199, while besieging the French castle of Chalus-Chabrol, Richard was struck by a crossbow bolt to the shoulder. Though the wound seemed relatively minor, it soon became infected. Richard's fate was sealed. The king who had led men into battle, who had outwitted his enemies and conquered lands, would soon die. His death was not one of grandeur or heroism, but of quiet suffering in the face of illness. Before he passed, Richard famously forgave the man who had shot him, a gesture of mercy that contrasted with his otherwise ruthless reputation. The news of his death spread quickly, and his passing marked the end of an era. His heart would be buried in the Holy Land, while his body would return to England, where it was laid to rest in the Abbey of Fontevraud. Richard's legacy endures, not because of the battles he won or the lands he claimed, but because of the myth of the lion-hearted king, a symbol of unyielding courage, of determination, and ultimately of the fleeting nature of glory. His life, though full of triumphs, was marked by isolation, by political machinations, and by a death that seemed far removed from the legendary figure that the world had come to know. As we reflect on Richard's life and death, we are reminded of the complexities of leadership, the loneliness that often accompanies power, and the fleeting nature of even the most heroic lives. His death may have come quietly, but the legacy of Richard the Lionheart remains, a reminder of the warrior king who carved his name into history. Segment 2 complete. Segment 3, Medieval Castle Mysteries. Now, let us move from the life of a king to the stone walls that house not only the rulers, but also the mysteries that have for centuries remained locked away. Castles, those great fortresses of the medieval world, are more than just impressive structures. They are filled with secrets, secrets hidden deep within their darkened halls, forgotten rooms, and winding passages. These are not just buildings made of stone and mortar. They are repositories of stories, both whispered and unspoken, about those who lived within their walls. Picture yourself standing at the foot of a castle's towering outer walls, the stones cold and ancient beneath your fingertips. The air smells of damp earth, mingling with the faint scent of wood and smoke. As you step inside, the sound of your footsteps echoes against the stone floors. The castle is quiet now, but it hasn't always been. It has been a place of life, of laughter, of sorrow, of grandeur, and of defeat. The construction of castles was an art form, one that took years, even decades to complete. Each stone was carefully placed, not just to defend, but to make a statement. They were designed to withstand not only physical siege, but also the tests of time. Yet for all their strength, they often hid secrets, rooms that no one was meant to see, passageways that led nowhere, chambers built in a hurry or forgotten altogether. Imagine walking through the castle, tracing the winding stone staircases, the narrow corridors lit by flickering torches. Each turn you take seems to lead you deeper into the heart of the structure, but also into its mysteries. There are rooms that seem to have been forgotten by time, some unused for centuries. Their walls are lined with dust and cobwebs, their floors untouched by footfall. These rooms were once bustling with activity, filled with the sounds of servants, of soldiers, of courtiers. Now they lie silent, their stories long buried in the past. Many castles were built with hidden passageways, secret tunnels meant for escape in times of danger or for sneaking unseen between parts of the castle. These passageways are narrow, often steep and winding. They lead from one hidden chamber to another, sometimes ending abruptly, sometimes stretching for miles under the earth. Some of these tunnels are known to have been used by royalty during sieges, while others have faded from memory, their exact purposes now lost to history. But there are also darker mysteries in these castles, mysteries that involve not just physical secrets, but the very soul of the building itself. The haunting presence of the past lingers in many of these castles. It is said that some castles are haunted not by mere ghosts, but by the weight of their own history, the sounds of footsteps in the night, the faint echo of a distant laugh, the sight of shadows flitting just beyond the corner of the eye. These are the whispers of those who have come before, their lives etched in the stone of the castle, their stories lingering long after they have passed. Many castles also held dungeons, dark, oppressive spaces meant for imprisonment, torture, and punishment. These dungeons were often located beneath the castle, deep in the earth, far from the sunlight. The air was thick with dampness, the walls coated in years of grime and blood. The cells were small, barely big enough to lie down in, with little ventilation and no warmth. Prisoners in these dungeons often spent years in isolation, waiting for a trial that never came, or facing a sentence that would end their lives. The sounds of clinking chains, the cries of despair, these were the daily realities for those locked away in the castle's deepest bowels. Even the castle's towers, those tall, imposing structures designed to offer a view of the surrounding land, hold secrets. Some castles were built with multiple levels, with the highest tower serving as a lookout point for approaching enemies. But other towers were designed as symbols of power, places where nobles could hold their court, display their wealth, and showcase their military might. Yet some of these towers were also used for much darker purposes. Some were places of confinement, where individuals were locked away for reasons known only to those in power. The secrets of these towers remain locked in time. In some castles, there are rooms hidden away in the most unexpected places. Secret chambers built behind false walls or under trapdoors, spaces that only a few were ever meant to see. These hidden rooms might have served as storage for treasures, as places for secret meetings, or as places for solitary reflection. But over time, these rooms were often forgotten, their existence obscured by new additions to the castle or simply lost to the passage of time. Today, archaeologists and historians search through the rubble of these old buildings, hoping to uncover a piece of the past that has long been hidden. The very construction of the castles is full of mystery. How did they manage to build such massive structures with the limited tools they had? The use of mortar and stone was perfected in medieval times, yet many of the methods used to raise these buildings remain unclear. Some believe that the sheer number of workers involved in the construction helped make the task possible. Others suggest that hidden techniques were used, methods passed down only to the master builders who never shared their secrets. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is the question of what lies beneath. Castle foundations are often built on ancient sites, sometimes on the ruins of previous structures. These older buildings, long since forgotten, may have been built on sacred or strategic land. The foundations of these castles were sometimes built over earlier fortifications, hidden burial sites, or even abandoned settlements. Beneath the stone floors and cold walls of the castles, there are stories that have never been told. As you walk through these quiet halls and forgotten rooms, you begin to realize that castles are not just buildings. They are living, breathing entities that hold the weight of centuries within their walls. The stories they hold are hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to uncover them. Segment 4. Noble life versus commoner struggles. As the day fades into evening, the rhythm of the castle slows. The servants finish their tasks, the halls grow quiet, and the nobles retire to their chambers. In the grand halls, the firelight flickers softly across tapestries and silverware. Outside the castle's thick stone walls, the world seems distant, almost unreal. But as we step away from the shadows of the noble chambers and the servants' quarters, we are reminded of the vast divide between the two worlds within the castle. On one hand, there is the life of nobility, luxurious, refined, full of privileges few could imagine. On the other, there is the life of the common folk, grinding, exhausting, and often desperate. Let us take a moment to gently explore both. walking slowly between the grand feasts of the wealthy and the humble quarters of the workers who make those feasts possible. The lavish life of nobility. Imagine yourself now in the great hall, the center of noble life in the castle. You stand beneath the high, arched ceiling, surrounded by intricate stonework and lavish tapestries that tell tales of battles won and ancestors honored. The flickering fire casts a warm glow over everything, and the long wooden tables are set for a feast. The sound of laughter, music, and conversation fills the air as guests, dressed in fine robes, gather to dine. The nobility move gracefully through this space, their presence commanding and unhurried. The men wear richly adorned tunics lined with gold or silver thread, while the women's gowns flow with elegance, embroidered with the finest fabrics. Jewelry made of gold, precious stones and pearls adorn their necks, wrists and fingers. The finest foods and wines are laid out on the table before them. Roasted meats, delicate pastries, fruits from faraway lands. Servants, always present but never seen, ensure that the feast flows smoothly, serving the guests with practiced ease. The luxury of the noble life is evident in every aspect. Their chambers are furnished with ornate furniture, warm from the hearth fires, filled with rich tapestries and fine cushions. Here, it's not about survival, but about comfort, about enjoying the pleasures of wealth and status. The garden beyond the castle walls is meticulously cultivated, with exotic plants carefully brought back from the Crusades. The scent of fresh flowers mingles with the gentle sounds of fountains and the whisper of leaves in the breeze. But despite all this grandeur, there is also a subtle weight to this lifestyle. The nobles are not exempt from the pressures of maintaining power. Political maneuvering is a constant in their lives, their time consumed by meetings, strategies, and alliances. Every decision is a delicate balance, and they know well that their wealth and security depend on their ability to keep their place at the top of the social pyramid. While the feasts are plentiful, they are also carefully orchestrated, often aimed at maintaining influence and asserting control over rivals. The harsh struggles of commoners. Now, imagine the world just beyond the towering castle gates. This is the world of the common folk, the peasants who work the land, the tradesmen who sell their goods in the market, the laborers who build the very walls that protect the castle. Your feet are on the dirt path that leads away from the castle, the weight of a heavy wooden bucket in your hand. The road is muddy, uneven, and full of people pushing carts, herding livestock, or selling their wares to passers-by. The air is thick with the smell of horses and livestock, of the sweat of men and women who have labored under the sun all day. The noise of the marketplace is deafening as vendors shout to advertise their goods, fruit, cloth, tools and grains, hoping to make enough to feed their families. Your life is a constant struggle. Each day begins before the sun rises, and the work never seems to end. If you are a farmer, you wake early to tend the fields. The land is rough and the harvests are uncertain. The crops are subject to the whims of the weather, droughts, floods, and storms. Even when the harvest is good, it is often taken from you by the castle's lord or by the church, leaving you with just enough to survive until the next season. If you are a craftsman, you rise each morning to make your goods, whether it's weaving cloth, building furniture, or crafting tools for the nobility. Your work is hard, and you rarely see the fruits of your labor. The goods you create are sold at market for a fraction of what they are worth, and there's never enough to save for a better life. In winter, the cold is your constant companion. Your home is small, often just a thatched roof with walls made of stone or wood. There is no fireplace, no warmth except what the meager fire provides. The floor is often dirt, and you sleep on straw mattresses, your back stiff from a day of work. The chill in the air never seems to leave, and the constant worry over whether you will have enough food to last through the long, harsh months weighs heavily on your mind. You are bound to the land, to the castle, to the whims of the nobles. You have little power, little control over your fate. Your life is defined by routine, a never-ending cycle of work that leaves little room for rest. Every coin you earn goes to the necessities: food, tools, shelter. There is no wealth, no luxury, no security. The nobles, with their fine clothes and sumptuous banquets, may never know the hardship of your life. But in a way, that's the way it has always been. The stark contrast. As you reflect on the lives of the nobility and the common folk, the disparity becomes glaringly clear. The noble's world is one of privilege, grand feasts, rich tapestries, and elegant chambers, where every need is catered to and every day brings more comforts. But beneath this opulence, there is also the pressure of maintaining control, the weight of political strategy, and the knowledge that their wealth and status are always precarious. In contrast, the commoner's life is one of survival, of grinding work in the fields, of simple food, of barely enough to live on. The labor is endless, and the rewards are minimal. Yet within this hardship, there is resilience, a quiet strength that keeps the common folk going. The noble's world is filled with comfort, but the commoner's world is filled with heart. It is a life of contrast, the nobility's luxury set against the commoner's struggle. Yet, both worlds are intricately connected. Without the labor of the common folk, the noble life could not exist. And without the wealth and protection of the nobles, the common folk would live in constant fear of invasion, of ruin. As you slowly turn away from the high walls of the castle and the grand life of the lords, you realize that the castle itself is a reflection of the lives within it, a balance of luxury and labor, of triumph and struggle. And no matter where you stand, in the shadows or in the light, you are part of this intricate world, its story written in stone and in the hands of those who work to keep it all running. Conclusion: the legacy of the castle. As you reflect on the lives within the castle's walls, we are reminded that the stories of history are never just about the great and the powerful. They are about the people who lived and worked in the shadows, who built the walls, the roads, the very foundations that hold the weight of empire. The servants, the soldiers, the commoners, they are the unsung heroes of history, their struggles often overlooked, but their contributions no less important. Tonight, as you settle into rest, let the quiet rhythms of the past wash over you. Let the whispers of the castle's forgotten servants, the quiet footsteps of kings and commoners alike, guide you into a peaceful slumber.